Are you stuck staring at your W-2? Are tax refund worries holding you back? You probably have FOMO, the fear of messing up. The fix? Using TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They find every credit and deduction to help you get every refund dollar you deserve. Or your money back. It's time to overcome your fear of messing up and get your taxes done right. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me, taxi. Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
What an amazing night for history as Artemis 2 splashes down safely back to Earth, right on the money, 8:07 p.m. Eastern Time. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. And we're going to talk to Dr. Sky, Steve Cates, in one moment. But first, here is the splashdown, and you'll hear the play-by-play.
Security splashdown, sending post-landing command now.
Splashdown confirmed.
Copy splashdown, waiting on VLDR.
Splashdown confirmed at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time. From the pages of Jules Verne to a modern-day mission to the moon, a new chapter of the exploration of our celestial neighbor is complete. Integrity's astronauts back on Earth. And the landing and support officer reports the vehicle is stable 1. We still will be deploying the crew module uprighting system to maintain that orientation. A perfect bullseye splashdown for Integrity and its 4 astronauts.
A perfect bullseye splashdown. You can't say it better than that. Well, joining us now is our next guest to talk about what this all means and how absolutely remarkable and incredible this moment was. The whole world has been watching. I've been glued the last few hours. Is our great Dr. Sky, Steve Cates. Steve, of course, you can catch him every night. He comes on midnight to 2 a.m. on WABC on Friday and Saturday nights. And Steve, first of all, your reaction to what the world witnessed. Just, gosh, I can't believe it's been 3 hours ago, but my jaw dropped. I was glued to the TV watching every moment.
Well, Rita, words are hard to describe. This is like amazing. I mean, everybody, whether you're a beginner in space science or whether you're one of the astronauts themselves, I mean, everybody should be elated about this on America's 250th anniversary. It goes to a long path of some successes and some failures. Now this one on the positive side, totally incredible. And Rita, I don't know how I would fare, and you have to speak for yourself and the listeners. Imagine being inside with the 4 people on board in 330 cubic feet of space for that duration. And what's even more incredible than that, to survive that, traveling, this is what is mind-boggling, going Mach 32, that's 24 to 25,000 miles an hour, to a 19-mile-an-hour safe splashdown with parachutes in a period of about 15 minutes. Now that is quite incredible. Right?
Yeah, that is really remarkable. What did you think were some of the biggest accomplishments? I mean, obviously, first of all, to be able to say that, that they went further than any human has gone before, traveled faster than any human has traveled before. What did you think were the most remarkable moments of this journey?
Well, testing the entire system here. I mean, this was I don't like to use the word shakedown cruise, a test cruise. And a test flight, but amazing. The technology of all the people from different agencies of NASA putting it all together, that's one of the most incredible things. But as you mentioned, going farther out in space than any human has gone, and humans themselves. But to me, what's incredible is a joint effort between the United States and the European Space Agency. They build the back end of that spacecraft that was detached just before the capsule re-entered. But all the other things in there, how do people survive in space? This is going to be a big subject of study as we move on to the moon. And by the way, Rita, the next of the Artemis missions, just in case people are curious, is, of course, Artemis 3, doing the naming thing. But it was actually a long time ago, 4 or 5 years ago, going to be the lunar landing mission. But this time they're going to do it in low Earth orbit. Why? They're going to be testing the lunar lander systems that Elon is building and Jeff Bezos in different competitions so that when we do Artemis 4, hopefully, by maybe mid-2028 or even beyond that to the end of that year, that's still incredible. The first lunar manned and woman landing mission on the surface of the moon to the lunar South Pole. So there's a lot of things they have to perfect. But in summary, Words can't describe it, Rita. It's just too precise, except for one thing, and it's comical to some. We can talk in space between here and the moon with a flawless sound like we have right now, hopefully. But guess what? When they splashed down, they were using their SRS radios and their satellite phones. And not to knock NASA, but there was a glitch there that even they're in the water and maybe, 10 miles away, they couldn't communicate for a little while. So they could communicate that far away, but very, very close to home. There was that little tiny glitch. But we'll bypass that one, Rita, for the great success of the mission.
I thought you were going to talk about the toilets. Because, that's amazing, too, that everything goes okay except for the toilets, right?
It is, Rita. The same problem they had on the International Space Station. They spent millions of dollars on that. And with this one, I guess the problem, without getting overly graphic here, is that the urine collection, the fan motor in there, got apparently clogged. They fixed it. And actually, then it had another problem as they went around the far side of the moon. But that's something they're going to have to look at because it's a very expensive, tiny toilet. And for anybody who's a camper, you know how small and maybe somewhat uncomfortable those little chemical toilets can be. Imagine being in 330 cubic feet itself, and being able to endure that. And they're, of course, the best of the best. They do all have the right stuff.
So now, walk us through what happens. We saw them land, and they all look great. I saw them airlifted out, and then they got choppered in. How long does it take for them to get acclimated? Some of them, I would assume, longer than others, right?
Yes, absolutely, Rita. Going back to the Russian and Soviet cosmonauts, some of them took weeks to get well. Some of our American astronauts actually had to be put into a hospital situation for a few days. Thank goodness nothing, really severe. But it's hard to predict. I mean, some people endure the long, journey in space a lot easier than others. But when they get out of these particular situations, they're there by flight surgeons, the best of medical care, and they're on board before they're being transported back to the Johnson Space Center on the USS John Murtha. A great crew, but it's a hard thing to answer. It takes, ask some of the other astronauts. They said sometimes they felt a little bit queasy for days, and even when they go into the ocean, for these people that have the right stuff, some had experienced in early Apollo missions, early Mercury and Gemini missions, the sensation of vertigo and seasickness slightly. Imagine that. You'd think that wouldn't happen, but somehow that environment changed everything.
It's remarkable, Dr. Sky, watching it today. And you and I talked earlier with John Catsimatidis.
Absolutely.
And we said, okay, 8:07, it's going to hit. Well, sure enough, I'm watching, and at 8:07 Eastern time, it hits. How did they do that? How can they literally do it? And this was so dangerous coming in, right? I mean, it has to be precise.
Well, Rita, it's all math. I mean, kudos to the people who do the celestial mechanics and the people who calculate these orbits. Remember, as we saw, and we will see in many other future iterations of Artemis, they're sitting in front of these really elaborate computer screens. So everything is literally precise. So to answer you, and more specifically, if they follow that path, and the hardest part to follow the path into the atmosphere is they made a slight little burn with their little rocket motors on the little capsule just to get in, if you want to call it, like you're driving down the freeway. And in this particular case, don't do it on the freeway, but you'd have to stay right on the middle stripe. So that's their downward journey. So they can calculate that as long as they're on that flight path. I mean, pilots that are listening, they know as they're landing with the sophisticated systems on airplanes like the autopilot, you want to make sure you're literally on that center line. And in this particular case, they were, because the hardest part of this is when they have to flip the capsule. See, they're coming in nose first, that curvy part, and then they have to fire the rocket motors. That, to me, is real science, when you have to do a 180 to turn it to the heat shield. So apparently it's all math, and they've got this thing really calculated. Even the ocean cooperated, because if they had a bad landing area, they may have had to do another location, of course. But they also had, very briefly, Rita, they had some concerns with Artemis 1 on a coating on the back of the heat shield called Avcoat. And even though that was an unmanned mission, they had like a dummy or two in there. When that came through the atmosphere, they noticed that there was some pressure problems with that heat shield, and gases escaped, so particulate matter, pieces literally broke off of the original heat shield. Now, they didn't do a whole new heat shield for this. They did a different entry into the atmosphere. So again, kudos to the scientists who know the math on this. They tried to have it heat less than possible from the previous mission, and now the rest is history. and it's a great story.
Yeah, it's a great story. So before I let you go, what's the timetable for Artemis? You mentioned Artemis 3 and 4, and then Mars, right?
Yes. Well, that's a long way off. But if we look at the next iteration, Artemis 3, we're looking, don't hold me to this like it's the fact, but they're saying that is NASA probably mid-2027 is when we'll launch a suborbital, that I should say orbital, low Earth orbit more precisely, where they're going to be testing a docking system with the lunar lander. You have to test that. That's very reminiscent of what Apollo 9 did to simply check our lunar lander back in the 1960s and 70s. And then if all goes the way it should, with all the blessings and kudos, Artemis 4 would be the manned and woman lunar landing, probably mid to late 2028. But things can change because that mission, you have to overcome a whole different science, Rita, where you have to not only deploy that lander, you have to make sure that it follows a flight path to the surface. And then equally important, probably more important, once it lands, it needs to take off and rendezvous again with the mothership, just like the Apollo.
So Mars is what? Mars is, if all goes as scheduled, are we going to see it, before 2030?
My prediction on this, Rita, I'm going to give it a really conservative date. I'm going to say you're probably not looking at a true Mars safe mission until probably mid-30s, maybe 2035, because there's a whole lot of other things that they have to work out. And that's an interesting thing. Space radiation, endurance in space. How do you handle such a long psychological journey like that, which would probably take 6 to 9 months one way? That's incredible. I mean, that's the stuff of Star Trek. And by then, we hope to have bigger and better rocket propellant. See, if we could get away from chemical rockets and use different technologies, that would help speed us there. We could get there faster if we had less dependence on chemical rockets. So all those rocket scientists out there are working hard to build that new generation of rocket motors and power. That's the stuff like Star Trek.
Yeah, and that's why they're called rocket scientists, because they are brilliant.
You got that right.
Dr. Sky, everybody make sure you tune in to him. I know your show's coming up in about 15 minutes on
Absolutely,
WABC. Rita. It's the best. I can't wait to hear your show tonight.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for just sharing this remarkable history with all
Always
of us.
a pleasure.
Always
a pleasure.
Thank you.
And as they say, ad astra to the stars, and we'll be talking about that in our show, and of course some other great topics on the mysteries of science and the universe.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it. Thank you so much, Dr. Sky. Great to share this night of history with you. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you very much.